Welcome. Let's have a short sitting meditation, please. We find our comfortable but alert position. Feel ourselves seated, firmly planted. Feel our hands resting. And take a couple of intentional, nice deep breaths and a long out breath. Now just settle into normal breathing. Just notice each in-breath and each out-breath. So simple, only noticing each breath. Noticing how our body feels for a moment. And if there are any tense places, let them relax. And we might want to just notice, what are we thinking about? What have we been thinking about as we came in? Name those thoughts. Well, I'm thinking about what I did earlier today. I'm thinking about what I have planned later. Thinking about what I'm going to say tonight. Then notice how our body feels. What sensations do we feel right now? How are we doing emotionally right now? Do we feel calm or restless? Eager, patient? We note all those things, and then we just come back to the breath, in and out. Very good. Here we are in week 4, we're halfway through. Tell me how you've been doing. A lot of reading, I know. I don't expect everyone to be right up to date, but if you can, that's good. And hopefully you're doing your practice regularly and having great insights. Tell me anything that's going on.
Well, I did get through the reading.
Yay.
And there is a lot of reading.
Yeah.
And I found that there's a lot more to meditation than what I ever thought there was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I think most people think it's just this quiet state that you're supposed to be in, and you're not supposed to be thinking about
The other stuff.
all the other stuff.
This week is a whole nother dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Go ahead. So if it's confusing, that's understandable.
Yeah.
There's a lot there.
That's how I felt too. I read it and I thought, wow, how am I gonna remember all this and all, I mean,
That's right.
it was a lot,
Yes.
but interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is my second time through it, to reading it.
Yeah.
And I'm still, going, oh my gosh, I'll need to reread it, like, for sure again.
That's what I started doing. I started rereading, but haven't gotten too far into the second
Yeah.
round.
you, Peggy?
I think okay.
Okay.
I used to do a gratitude journal
Uh-huh,
and I did start that back up.
good.
Oh, I'm proud of you. I
That's
really am.
Because I was going to do it each week and finally I did.
great,
But yeah, waiting to learn
yeah.
how to focus, yeah.
Yeah, I think I have to go back to the chapter 2 to really put some word focuses, like, just like the listening or the thinking or the, like you said, the gratitude, the words, so that I can maybe make myself a little poster or something, just as a reminder of keywords.
Well,
Help me.
realizing how complicated this is, I think is one reason why this year I added week 7 and 8 on, because we're gonna come back to this, because there's so much there.
Yeah,
And it can be dizzying, but remember, come back to the basics. Like, first we learn to just be with the breath. That's always there.
mhm.
And then we learn to be with the body. That's always there, and we have various ways of coming back to the body. So this week is, instead of making the breath and the body the object of our meditation, we're making our emotions and thoughts the object. And there's a couple of key skills in there that make it easier. So one is mental noting or naming. And when a thought, or let's focus on emotions. It's hard to say. Maybe thoughts are easier to start with. When a thought comes in, they keep coming, right? Thoughts come by, and when one comes and we notice it, that's a big step. And then if we can name what the thought is, that kind of solidifies it, and then we can understand it a little better. So we may want to say, well, one thing is we can try to name whether the thought is about the past or the future or the present. Most of them are about the past or the future. We're either planning or worrying or remembering or regretting or those things. And if we can just say, oh, that's in the past, that's helping. And then we can even say, well, what are we remembering? Well, we remember what we did earlier today, or remember some event from the past. And we just briefly say, oh. So you can say thinking, you can say future or past, and you can say, oh, I'm thinking about, let's see, what would I have been thinking about? Planning is my big one. I'm planning what I'm going to do tomorrow, because I have to go to this appointment in Milwaukee, and I have to be, oh, okay, I got it. And then, if I want to, I can let it go. So, noticing it and naming it makes it more real, and then if we want to, we can let it go. And then we can come back to the breath and wait for the next one. And that's what's so cool about it, because if you can let it go, another one may come, and who knows what the next one might be. And the next one might be really cool. And then you say, oh, this is really cool. I want to stay with this one for a while. Well, tonight we're going to talk about staying with it instead of letting it go. But either way, naming it is really helpful. Later I've got a handout that has a bunch of names for thoughts, which can be a little helpful. So I've got a whole list of them. And people have, of course, done that. They've put all the possible thoughts down, all the possible emotions, all the possible sensations. There's a lot, but I've tried to kind of distill that, so I've got a list for you later that might help. So the first skill that one of the skills Sharon talks about is mental noting or mental naming, which is really helpful. Okay, so there's just it's so much, but there's a couple of key skills that just make it a little easier. The next one is noting the feeling tone. Thoughts, to a certain extent, and emotions, certainly, have a feeling tone. That is, they either feel pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And so when something comes by, you can try to say that. Oh, like, I'm planning this for tomorrow. It's a little unpleasant, kind of anxious about it. Oh, anxiety, that's part of it. Unpleasant, anxiety, I've named it, and I've kind of distilled it a little bit to say, oh, it's a little unpleasant, okay? Or, let's say it was a memory, what I did last weekend. Oh, that was pretty nice. Oh, pleasant, okay. Now, neutral, some things we're just trying to figure something out, we might notice that. So, feeling tone. So the first thing is naming, feeling tone, saying whether it's unpleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So that's another pretty simple little skill to help solidify it in our mind, so we know what we're doing. Now you can go beyond feeling tone. Let's say it is unpleasant, and then you can try to name it a little more specifically. So once you know it's unpleasant, well, what's really going on here? So I'm planning this, I'm anxious about tomorrow, what else is going on? Well, fear, maybe I'm afraid it's not going to work out, okay, and we notice that. But the third skill, that's really the most important part, is embodying it. Every feeling, every emotion has a physical sensation, they say, if we can get there. One of my teachers says, an emotion is a thought that's felt in the body. Now, that's not quite how I see it, but if you really stay with an emotion, let's say sadness, okay? Oh, so I notice I feel sad, that's kind of unpleasant, okay? I'm noticing sadness, and then I say, where do I feel it? Well, it's kind of a heaviness right here, okay? And just notice it. So tonight, instead of after we name it, after we notice whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, instead of just saying, I'm going to let that go and come back to the breath, sometimes we decide, I'm going to stay with that. And that's going to be the object. So we can decide. We can decide if something's worthwhile staying with it, we can decide, okay? And there's a couple of reasons why we might decide. Something might come up that is really horrible and we're not ready for it. We can try to put that aside and say, I'll be ready for that later. One of my students the other day said, well, I didn't talk last night because I compartmentalized that. I put that to the side in my life. I'm not going to deal with that right now. So that's possible. But when what we can really learn about ourselves, when we notice something and stay with it and feel it, especially those uncomfortable feelings, sadness, anger, even anxiety, and we just notice how it feels and we stay with it. When we do that, usually you can feel it in your body, it begins to lighten a little bit. It kind of says, oh, it's not as terrible as I thought. And one of those reasons, another thing Sharon points out, is we have add-ons. We have little stories we tell ourselves about it. Oh, I'm a bad person because I thought that. Or I keep doing that all the time. What's going on with me? And we notice, oh, that's my story. Or she likes to call them tapes. Like it's her mother talking to her. Remember that story in there? There's one. Yeah. Now, the message I get from my mother most often is probably a good one. She said, Michael, don't overdo. So I hear that every once in a while. So mental naming, feeling tone, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, embodiment, feeling it in the body, and I guess there's a step there between noting and before embodiment, we decide Make a decision that we're gonna stay with that. And then we embody it, we feel it in the body, we stay with it. And we notice if there's any associated thoughts like stories we're telling, judgments about ourselves. So there's a lot of different levels and you have to kind of just let it come. It's like opening yourself. So once you can let yourself settle a little bit, you can begin to open yourself to all these things that are happening and you can really learn. Sometimes you might start crying. It's okay. Some people call it, we're working on something. You've got work to do, Michael. Yeah, inner work. That's how we become grown-ups. That's how we really mature, grow character, and we can pass it on to other people. So like I said, sometimes we decide I'm not going there. So I'm gonna lead you through a guided practice trying this. One other thing that's really reassuring is we know that all these things are impermanent. Nothing is here gonna stay. So even if something is really unpleasant and we really don't like it and we stay with it, we realize it's gonna pass. It's gonna pass. That really helps, just knowing that, I think. Shall we try it? Okay. Here we are again, just sitting and noticing our breath. And notice how we feel right now. Or maybe if we don't notice anything, notice something we have felt recently. An emotion. I'm not going to tell you what to feel. You just think of what you've been feeling. I'll put out some examples. Sadness, happiness, anxiety, calm, irritation, kindness, maybe just a kind of a sense of well-being or a sense of feeling ill at ease. So try to name it. And decide if this is something you can stay with for a few minutes. And breathe with it. Maybe say that name several times. Now try to notice if it's pleasant or unpleasant, or neutral. Name it again. Has it changed? Is it still the same name or has it changed to something else? we've decided we're gonna stay with this feeling. We've named it, we notice whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. Now, let's see if we can notice where do we feel it in the body. Is it in our belly, in our chest, in our head, in our arms? What does it feel like there? Just stay with that. And breathe with it. Just say to yourself, I'm just going to stay with this feeling for a little bit and see what it has to tell me. It doesn't define who I am, but it's something I'm going through, so it's worth paying attention to. Not avoiding it. And if it's a pleasant feeling, we're not clinging to it too tightly, we're just noticing what it is. Noticing where we feel it in the body. Has the feeling changed in intensity? Is it stronger or weaker? Is there something else behind that feeling? Is it have more than one layer? Not exactly trying to figure it out, we're just staying with it and letting it be. Not trying to figure it out, just noticing it. Just feeling it. And a lot of times we'll get to a point where we notice that we're kind of blocked or we can't move on with it anymore, and we can say to ourselves, okay, I've explored it, I'm gonna put it aside for now, and I may come back to it another time. You know, I'm not gonna get it all done right now. And let's do that right now. Let's put aside this emotion. Let's just lay it on the shelf for a while and just come back to the breath. We've named it, we noticed it, we stayed with it. Now we're just putting it to the side. That's okay. Just noticing each in-breath and each out-breath. Now, if you will, I'd like you to bring up an unpleasant emotion. It could be the same one you just had or a different one. Something you remember you've had recently. A feeling that's kind of unpleasant, negative, anger, sadness, disappointment, disgust, pain. So find one, name it. What is it? and decide if we can handle that right now. We're gonna stay with this. That's gonna be the object. We're gonna just stay with this and feel it. And we breathe with it. We notice, take a couple breaths and just breathe with that feeling. So we named it. It's unpleasant. Maybe notice we're telling stories to ourselves about it. What thoughts are associated, if any. And now the big step, feel it in the body. Where do we feel it? And what does it feel like? A lot of these are a tightness, like a gripping somewhere. Like our body is making up armor to protect ourselves. And we try to soften into it. Just let our body soften into that feeling. Just let it come. We're safe for now. It's only going to be here for a bit. We can just notice it. As uncomfortable as it is, we're just going to stay with it for now. Notice if it's changing in intensity. Is it getting stronger or weaker? Are there any layers there? Do we notice that that what we first named it is maybe changed? Maybe there's something behind that, something else that we're noticing. Just stay with that and breathe with it. Breathe with it. Remind ourselves, this does not define who I am. It's just something passing. We have these thoughts, we have these emotions, they come and they go. They're worth noticing, but it doesn't mean that that defines us. It's just something there. It's just something there. It's just a thought. It's just a feeling. It's just some brain activity. And after we stay with it a while, we can say, okay, we did good. We found something else about ourselves. We were there. Now we can let it go. We can let it go. We can come back to it again if we want to. Just let it pass, as all things do. And come back to each in and out breath. Say a little gratitude for ourselves for doing this. Gratitude for having a mind that can handle this. And just notice how we feel right now after going through this. Well, let's see what you feel like sharing. Tell me how many of you had a pleasant thought for their first one. That's the same thing the other night.
Oops.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good. How many of you came back to the same emotion on the second round? Or a lot of you had something else come up. Okay, even that's really good, really good. Were you able to name it? Okay, and were you able to say whether it was pleasant or unpleasant? Yes. And did you have any associated thoughts or judgments about yourself? And how many of you could feel it in your body?
Yeah.
Where did you feel it?
The throat and
Throat,
in the
yeah.
heart.
Throat and heart, yeah. Yeah, what did it feel like?
It felt like my heart was speeded up.
Okay, yeah. Sometimes I've noticed a heaviness
Yeah.
and at the same time a lightness, like, oh, it's really heavy, and then when I just let it lighten, oh, it feels so different, so you can feel both things sometimes. Was it hard? A little bit hard to do, yeah?
Yeah.
It's meant to be hard. That's how we learn. But if it's too hard, we let it go. And so there's another skill that you can bring. If it's really hard, you say, not only am I going to put it to the side, I'm going to bring up something positive. And that's worthwhile. It's too hard, I'm not going there. I'm going to think of a memory that was really nice, or like our favorite place in nature, a waterfall, or think of some soothing music, or the face of a friend. So that's something we can turn to if it gets overwhelming. But if we can do this work, we can learn a lot. I feel I have over the past couple months. My friends were saying, and they didn't always tell me, but now that I'm working on it, they say, oh yeah, you weren't grieving enough. You should experience that grief. Well, I am. And I'm feeling better and sleeping better. Still cry, but that's okay.
As I was going through the second one, and I didn't really want to be there, and that's when it brought me to nature,
Okay,
you know, and
You
then
did that.
it just made me feel much better.
good,
I
yeah,
don't know if I'm supposed to,
yeah.
but that's where it went today.
Wow, terrific,
Wow.
thank you.
You know, I was kind of thinking, I don't know if this goes along with that, if it's right or not, right, whatever. But I let myself think, but I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
in both the first and the second one. But that I gotta keep working at taking an action for myself to be more calm with.
Okay, yeah. You can get the feelings like, what did I do to deserve this? That's a common one.
Yeah.
And you may come up with an action plan of dealing with it. That's good too.
Yeah.
But the important thing is just to notice it and feel it. And to be kind to ourselves, to say, it's okay. It's okay, self. And that's what we're going to work on next week is kindness, because the kindness to ourselves and to everyone else is really important in this process. So, anything else you'd like to share about what this was like?
It's the tear ducts flowing.
Yeah.
I always get emotional,
Yeah.
and I always see that as a sign of weakness, but it isn't. It's a sign of caring,
Yes.
more of a compassion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Anyone care to name what it was? What emotion was it?
Sadness.
Sadness?
I think my first one was just the anxiety of, I can't do this,
Right?
you know?
Yeah.
And well, I could feel my, just tensing,
Yeah.
I
tensing
can feel
up.
that too.
Uh-huh.
and go,
Yeah, good.
but that was what the first one was, I can't do this, I can't.
Uh-huh. Good. You noticed.
Mhm.
That's what it's about. There's no right or wrong way,
Yeah.
just noticing. There are tools. And if we keep doing it, we're gonna get better at it and learn more and more. There's so much to learn. We're never gonna learn all of it. So keep at it. The more we can, the better. And then we're gonna be better people. We're gonna understand other people when they're going through stuff. Yeah. So I have 3 handouts this week. The first one is helping with naming, and we'll read it together. Mental noting is a helpful tool in meditation to help us become aware of our thoughts, emotions, and sensations. When we notice something, taking our focus away from the object of meditation, we say to ourselves, oh, it's not breath. We can briefly name it. This may help us then to let go of this distraction and return to our primary object. So that's one thing we can do. We can say, oh, I noticed a thought, I noticed an emotion, I named it, I'm gonna let it go and I'm gonna come back to the breath. Or, it doesn't say here, but it says at the bottom. It can be helpful to build a vocabulary of these experiences. Here's a list of common thoughts, emotions, and sensations. Add to this your own list of experiences that tend to occur in meditation. So in the coming week, look at this. And when something comes up, and after you're done with your meditation, you can look back and say, oh, so planning, worrying, rehearsing, fantasizing, those are all future, aren't they? Or remembering, analyzing, judging tend to be past. Those are thoughts. Or in terms of emotions, we've got some negative ones, unpleasant ones, fear, anger, sadness, disgust. And then we've got some positive ones, happiness, surprise, excitement, relief, or sometimes, surprise might be a mix of positive and negative. Sensations. So when we come to notice it in our body, it's helpful to say, well, what does it feel like? Is it heavy or light, hot or cold, empty or full? I think that's a really good one. Does it feel empty or full? Open or constricted. So often if it's really a painful thing, we tighten around it. We notice a tightness. And then we may decide, I'm going to go ahead and let go of that tightness. I'm going to be open. Oh my God, that feels so good then when you can open to it. Does it feel tense, pressure? And then there's the basic five senses: hearing, touching, smelling, tasting, seeing. And at the bottom it says, sometimes we may find it valuable to stay with an experience, reflecting on how our thoughts, emotions, and sensations interact with each other. That's what we were just doing. We were making that the object, and then we can always come back to the breath as our anchor. So this is just a partial list. I've got some longer lists I'm probably going to share with you another time, but and you can add some to this. Maybe in the coming week, you can look at those and you can add your own. Questions about that?
That's good.
this is another thing that's kind of like that. This is just, these are thoughts and judgments, you might say, some of those add-ons that Sharon talks about. And somebody said they call this their favorite thinking hits. So when they're trying to concentrate on the breath and these thoughts keep coming by, boom, there's one. And so, just looking down the list, planning, worrying, rehearsing, fantasizing, all future, right? Remembering, pleasant or unpleasant, reliving, figuring out, analyzing, judging, blaming, doubting, self-loathing, self-aggrandizing, say, oh, I'm so great, confusion. So it's kind of helpful to have a vocabulary of what we're experiencing. So that's just, you know, sometimes after your meditation, you want to say, oh, what was that exactly? And we don't want to get carried away with trying to name it too specifically, but having some words for it helps define it and helps us experience it more directly. And I have one more that I'm just going to leave with you to take your time with on your own. It's called the pause. And this is just a reminder, every once in a while, to sit back, take a couple breaths, and notice how we feel. And this is just kind of a direction of how you might try that once in a while. The pause lets us step out of where we're going and into this moment. Now, one thing that this applies to in our daily life is reacting versus responding. And I'm going to share a story from my own life from this past week. So I was the Kiel Superintendent of Schools. I had contacted him. I said, can I come in and talk to the teachers about meditation? He said, come on in. So we had this time. I went to the place. I got there 15 minutes early. Nobody was there. No chairs. Okay, well, I was early, but I went to the office. Nobody knew what was going on. And I raised my voice. I said, I'm here to teach this. Oh, I noticed I was reacting. I was expecting something, okay? So I learned something as the principle of have no expectations. Be there prepared for whatever might happen. And so that was good. So when we can be open to what's going on and not have a fixed viewpoint about it, we can learn. So I learned something. I learned something right then. There were a few people who came, and we did have a nice little talk, so I was pleased that we could do that. So it's sort of like this pause, that's what that's about, is about stepping back from what's going on. And when we have our formal meditation time, that is really a stepping back. It's just stepping back to be with ourselves for a while, not to be with everything else out there, just to be here. As much as we can, you know? That stuff keeps going on, but sometimes we can let it go and just be with ourselves, I hope. So for next week, read the next part. That'll be week 4. Up to page 180, please. And that's called Loving Kindness. A little different. It's not just being mindful. It's now bringing certain specific thought into our mind. Loving kindness, cultivating compassion and true happiness. Please. Also, continue your regular meditation and come back next week.
thank you.
Welcome. Anything else you wanna talk about? We'll have a short sitting meditation, and if you wanna hang around, and talk about yourself, you can. Okay? Good. Just sitting. Noticing each breath. Noticing how we feel and what we're thinking about, and just letting those things go. Let them fade. Let them wash away like clouds. Just resting with the breath. So peaceful, nothing else to do right now. Just resting with each breath. Thanks for your practice.
Thank you very much.
So when there's things that you're uncomfortable with, like, say for instance, I have never been able to get up in front of people and talk or do anything.
Right?
Well, there's something coming up and I'm supposed to do that. And I don't know, during a meditation, if you're thinking about that, is there something that will help you overcome that?
Possibly, yes.
Possibly.
Yeah.
But how?
Just noticing it, just feeling it, and admitting that it's there. Okay, so it's like you got a little practice. You're sitting there and you're imagining what you're going to be like when you get there. Okay, and so it's like a practice session, and there's no pressure now because there's no people there, and just noticing how it feels. That's all you need to do. That may help when you get to the place. So then you get to the place and you say, oh, I already practiced this, and I'm just going to notice it and feel it and breathe and take a couple of breaths and carry on as best you can.
And then my heart starts pounding.
Oh, yeah. I think are you going to take notes? I mean, take notes with you.
Yeah.
Because that really does help, because otherwise I would oh my gosh, I don't even know how I'm gonna begin, because I would get so nervous,
Right. That was just like doing this practice tonight, and the first thing that comes to my mind is how nervous I am,
Yeah.
and then the anxiety sets in, so it's like.
I would be right there with you though. I would. I could talk to a classroom of kids, but not adults,
Yeah, right.
So.
So during a meditation, should you be telling yourself it'll work, or it's okay, or I don't know?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Just telling yourself it's okay. It's okay to feel anxious. It's okay. It's normal. And just breathe through it. And when you notice it and feel it, and notice where you feel it in your body, it will tend to lighten a little bit.
No, if you like sometimes I would be very, very nervous. Would I need to look at people or individual people? I'm not sure of that answer. Because like I
Right.
said, I have.
Look over the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah.
Look over the top of them.
Yeah.
They used to say, when you're on stage, imagine they're all naked or
Yeah.
something like that.
Oh, boy.
I don't know if that's the right
Don't know if I
answer.
wanna go there,
You don't wanna go there.
Well, I like how you say be gentle with yourself, because it's really true that, you know, you feel so judged, but they're not judging you. They're just
Right.
receiving
Yeah,
you, you know,
right.
and
Why do
feeling,
some people go to, why are they able to do that and not, they just,
Yeah.
it's like
Well,
talking to your
practice
neighbor.
helps. If you have to keep doing it, you're gonna get better
I
at it.
suppose.
One of the most profound stories I heard was about this man who was coming to speak to a group of meditators, and he was known for being good, but he was developing Alzheimer's. And he got up there and he said, well, I don't remember what I'm supposed to talk about, but I'm feeling a little bit scared right now. And I'm looking out, and he was just telling them how he felt right in the moment. He forgot completely what he was there for, but he just noticed it and he talked about it. That was really
yeah,
moving.
wow.
Yeah. So if we could get there, we'd be doing really good.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, this is not anything earth shattering, you know, that I have to do, but it's just a matter of being in front of other people.
Yeah.
And you have time to think about it.
Yeah, right, right.
I agree. Being well prepared and having your notes is important. Yeah. And one thing I think is really helpful is don't rush. Slow down.
Speak slower rather than faster.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
And if you need to pause once in a while, I have a lot of times tell people, I might pause once in a while. That doesn't mean I'm getting lost. It means I'm just gathering. And it gives them time to gather what they've heard too. So I think that's helpful to remind yourself.
Yeah.
And you can just say, well, I'm feeling a little anxious, so I'm going to take 2 breaths right now. So you all breathe with me.
We could try that.
Because when you're real, then they will hear you.
yeah,
And of course, one of the best things when you're talking to people is to tell stories, not just facts. Facts people lose, but if you can tell a story about something, that really helps.
mhm.
About yourself or about an illustration of the point you're trying to make.
Or even it's really good to see you.
Yeah.
It's really good to see you.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
You know,
Jokes are good, but only if you're
Yeah,
good,
only
good
if you're
joke
good,
teller.
Some people
Don't be artificial about telling jokes. Uh-huh.
but that's about all I
yeah,
have.
Very good. Thank you.
that's a very real.
And that's what I'm so happy when you can tell what's going on. Thank you.
I can tell you, I spoke out loud at, well, all of the siblings spoke at my mother's funeral, and we just had a very small funeral. But I probably should have had notes, that's what I'm saying, it would be good to have had notes. And I truly don't remember much of what I said because of
Yeah,
Sure.
the whole
Yeah.
Yeah.
thing.
Uh-huh.
It was so emotional, yeah.
Yeah. But you spoke from the heart.
Yes, mm-hmm,
Yeah.
yeah, it was good.
Go ahead.
okay.
And your great grandchild's
Yes.
okay?
Want to see a picture?
Yes.
Always like
He's still in the hospital. He's a
Oh,
week old.
Yes.
Oh,
He's passed all his neurologic tests. He's eating great. Did I tell you he is 9 pounds?
Oh,
Oh,
Oh
2
my.
ounces, so
wow,
huge.
bitty bitty.
And, I'm not exactly sure why, but maybe because his birth was so hard, he's still having a little trouble breathing, so he's on oxygen, so they won't let him go home until he's off oxygen. And it's kind of stressful for his parents having him in the hospital all this time,
Yeah.
but otherwise he's okay. So his name is difficult. Ivica, and they call him Vici.
Oh.
That I
Is-
would have to write it down.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would,
Oh, where'd this come from? These are old pictures, come on. Let's come,
did they give him a name of, does it have a family or?
it's his mother his grandmother is from Puerto Rico, I think, or someplace
Oh.
like that, so that's where I think it comes from.
So it could be more common there.
Well, I got a different way of getting to it, let's go to this way.
I think we're still online.
What?
I think we're still online.
So he's a pretty good looking little guy.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh,
Cute.
look at that hair.
Yeah,
He's gonna have dark hair.
I think
He's
so.
pretty, I would say.
Yeah, and here's him with his parents. My grandson Zane and